I am Jim Collison and live from Omaha, Nebraska in the Gallup offices in India. This is Gallup's Call to Coach, recorded on June 30th, 2015. Call to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you have questions during the webcast, we do have a live chat room that's available for you right below the main video window. Most of you will listen to this recorded version of it. If you have questions or you'd like custom strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, you can contact us. Just send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. or use the contact form right there on the live page. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center. This is Gallup-Strengthscenter.com for all your coaching resources and training needs. And you can catch the video in both streaming and downloadable audio for offline listening to all the past shows. We have more just like this. They're all available, including our mobile apps. If you haven't used our Android or iPhone app yet, keep your top 5 at your fingertips. Those are all available on our coaches blog. That's just coaching.gallup.com. Pooja Luthra is our host today. She works as an advanced consultant with Gallup in Delhi. Pooja, it's great to see you, and welcome back to another Call to Coach. We're excited to be back.
Thanks, Jim. It is good to be back. Seems like forever since we last did it. Well, without further ado, I'll introduce our guest for today. His name is Venkat, and I had the opportunity to know him when he was doing his Gallup certification through the accelerated program a little while ago. Venkat is the HR service delivery lead for corporate functions with Accenture India. He's an avid trainer teaching over 20 courses within Accenture, including flagship programs of Franklin Covey and De Bono. So that's Venkat for you here. Also, from my various interactions that I had with him as the program was going on, I do know he enjoys coaching. He's passionate about coaching and does a lot of it formally and informally inside and outside the organization. We'll pick your brains on that, Venkat, as we go along to see how that is coming along for you. But before we start off, why don't you tell us a little bit about your top 5?
Fantastic. Good morning, Pooja. Good morning, Jim. Actually, good evening, Jim, and thank you for having me here. And Pooja, it's lovely to see you after 4 months. My top 5 are strategic, self-assurance, maximizer, relator, and learner. And I have actually, to tell you a little more, if I were to start with, I think the learner, relator, and self-assurance absolutely top the charts for me as I see it. Over the last couple of months, I've actually come to realize how they've played out all my life. And the strategic and maximizer actually prop the other 3 up. And that's a little bit about my top 5.
I remember you and I having a lot of discussion around one of your themes that you were not clear about, and then we went into a huge debate about it. Which one was that?
We went into a lot of debate about strategic.
About strategic, because that was something that you weren't sure about. So any new insights around the strategic piece as the months have progressed and you've got to know a little bit more?
Yes, actually, many more. I think strategic has come to mean very simply to me my ability to spot relevant patterns and issues extremely quickly. So much so that I now begin to see how it works with many of the other themes, how, I think more than anything else, my ability to see the end picture, my ability to understand what's going on, seeing patterns, also my ability to narrow down and zoom in on what the core issue is that we are solving for is extremely sharp. So as much as I was surprised on what strategic means, I meant at that time, I think today I can actually see it play out very, very well. And I'm no longer surprised that it is number 1.
Really? So, I mean, that's, I think, a classic case in point for the process of name it, claim it, and aim it that we had used during the program about, understanding what the theme was by the report. And then absolutely, and the reason I remember it so vividly, because I think we had multiple discussions around the one theme because it was bothering you so much at that time, and you were trying to pin it down as to how exactly it plays out for you. So I'm glad that you're in a place where you're sort of able to relate to it much better now. Now tell me a little bit more. So I know you're with Accenture and you're a trainer there. So in
Mhm.
terms of the certification, post certification, any changes in your training style that your talents have influenced?
It's actually accentuated my training style. I wouldn't necessarily say, changes. I do training in addition to my core job. So my core job is managing HR service delivery,
Mm,
and I teach over 20 programs. I
mm,
think what has happened is I have a lot of insights post, the Gallup Strengths certification about why I teach the way I teach. And actually, I even know why I teach today. I teach
mm,
because I enjoy the process of learning.
yeah.
Uh, and that's so core to me. It's not about what I teach, it is about who I teach. It's about the process of teaching itself. It's about looking at the aha moments in people. And I think that's really what points me towards coaching as well.
Mm,
It is also about being able to very quickly understand why somebody is in a classroom,
mm,
understand what, over a period of 8 hours while they're with me, or over a period of an hour that somebody is getting coached. Ability to understand, look at patterns, look at issues, look at what the underlying reasons of what really brought them to the table, ability to form a very, very deep relationship, and allow my self assurance to play out in the process, giving the person a lot of confidence. So I would say that today, what has happened since February when I was in the classroom with you is, I'm a lot more aware, and all of my actions are far more deliberate than they used to be before I started my strengths journey.
great. And isn't that the point really, to make things more intentional and be more of who you are? So that's a great
Absolutely.
thing. So coming on to the coaching part of it, so what role does the idea of coaching play in your role or outside of it? How are you sort of incorporating that?
So I think I am personally drawn to coaching because I'm fascinated by choices people make.
Mm,
I and I, if I go back even a year or two when I actually started looking for a coach program to enhance my skill, I think
mm-hmm,
the intention was to say, how can I channelize my fascination of how people make choices and allow them, help them in their journey to make those choices. So it was really a process of skill building for me. I
mm,
started with a coaching certification. And to me, what Strengths Finder has come to mean is a very, very powerful tool uh, that objectively, in a language that most people that I'm now working with understand, are able to really relate and look at patterns. They can go back as far as early childhood days and say, yes, that's what made it work for me, to say
mm,
how it is playing out for me today. And
mm,
that's really what coaching with the Strengths Finder has come to mean to me.
mm. So I'm curious, Venkat, were you coaching even prior to your certification?
I was coaching. I've been coaching actively for the last 2 years,
Okay.
and now what I do since my certification is use Strengths Finder as an extremely active tool to
Mm.
coach. It is my go-to tool
Okay.
as I start coaching people.
Okay. So, any examples that you'd like to share with us about a coaching intervention based on the Strengths Finder that you've had lately?
Yes, actually, one with I'm working with two teams internally, and one of the teams is I think in both the teams here is how it's playing out. We did the Strengths Finder. We decided who does the test for all 34, and some of the junior people who are starting their journey did their testing on only the five. I'm investing an hour with each person, helping them understand uh, what their list 34 means, getting them to do some pre-work in terms of preparation for what is it that's bringing them to the coaching space. I'm investing a lot of time helping people understand what some of the definitions are. Exactly what you did for us. What's a theme? What's a talent? What's a strength? What's a weakness? Helping people get their orientation towards the 3 types of reports, making them understand themes, and categorizing them into dominant, supporting, lesser themes. And what all of this is actually translating to now, as I'm in very advanced stages, month 2 of working with 2 of the teams, is we are now getting into conversations to say, how does all of this link to the objectives of the team? What is it that I bring to the table? And I'm actually meeting the first team in a group setting on Thursday of this week in Delhi to talk about what does your team strengths grid look like? Who brings what to the table? How do you contribute to the team? What makes your world really go around, and how comprehensive does the profile of the team look like? So that's how it's evolved. If I were to talk to some of the leaders of those teams, leaders of the 2 teams, I think the responses are, A, we are a lot more self-aware than when we started. 2, we are beginning to learn, we are absolutely beginning to learn who brings what to the table. And I think 3, now they are moving in the direction of saying, how do I tap into the other person in order to make sure that all of us are contributing in a form that we are most productive to the team?
I think
So
that's a
that's
great thing. Yeah, go ahead.
No, so that's internally. I think externally, I've had the opportunity to work with 2 entrepreneurs who are in the process of setting up their own small business. And I think I've been working with them for a period of 2 years, and they were, I was coaching them in the best possible way with, coaching skills. And I think what's happened in the last 3 months is, since both of them are the CEOs of this partnership, I, invited them to take the test. And now I think that discussions are based around what's the role each one of them plays. Who's good at bringing in the business, who's good at designing programs internally. And it's an absolute joy to see them tango as they're growing their business. It's methodical, it's managed extremely well, because the conversations between the 2 of them is to say, this is what I am good at, this is what you bring to the table, maybe this is what you need to do, and this is what I will do. So the partnership is, I'm actually seeing the partnership come to bear.
Absolutely, and sounds amazing in terms of, the objectives that you've managed to help them accomplish. At least the entrepreneurs, I think the objectives were fairly clear. If they're starting out and they need to sort of understand who plays what role, it sort of played out well, right? So when going back to both the entrepreneur example as well as the teams that you're working with, in the process of name it, claim it, any tools you found specifically helpful that sort of got people onto their aha moment about, okay, this is how I see the theme play out for me, that sort of a thing?
So in the name it, claim it, there are 2 that I want to, actually I'm going to talk about 3. I think one is the reports themselves.
Yeah.
Pooja, I'm going to up that to 4. I think just the report themselves. I think the aha moment starts with people understanding there are 3 reports. And I introduce them as report 101, which is your signature themes. And then I talk about proficiency level 2, which is your list of 34. And I tell everybody, just walk around with it all the time, and I don't leave mine unattended. And the third one I say is really advanced and proficiency, the highest proficiency, which is your strengths, insight, and action planning. And I invite people to pick it up very gradually, to say, get comfortable with the first one, and you can work your way through to 2 and 3. And I think people I work with seem to, that's extremely welcome. I think the second one is introduction of the themes into executing, influencing, relationship building, as well as strategic thinking. And then doing the little table at the end once they've sorted out their dominant, supporting, and lesser. What I do is I ask them to put in the numbers, whether I coach them in person or virtually, and say, I want you to at least give me 3 insights. There's a lot of starting trouble. And but once the third one comes in, I can't stop them, because they suddenly see a simple table with 9 numbers and they just keep flowing. It transcends very quickly from saying, yeah, here's what I'm not good at, to saying, you know what, this is exactly how I do it. And I think I have personally learned from that simple table on how to interpret uh, my list of 34 and how they work well with each other.
Mm.
The third one is something that I'm using very extensively now, the third and the fourth. The third one is I ask people to say, if this is a personal objective in the near term and this is a professional objective, tell me, how are you going to use your talent statements from your top five
Mm.
and follow up in a subsequent coaching session to say, how did that work out for you?
Mm.
And
Mm.
people are able to see, hey, you know what, I don't know how to use it, so this is really raw. Or somebody
Mm.
comes back and say, that is a balcony for me,
Mm.
and that's
Mm.
something I need to use more and more. So very simple. I think today
Mm.
a lot of my conversations are focused around making it extremely tangible for people to link the talent statements to how they will bring their objectives to life and to
Mm.
bear. And the
Mm.
third one is, for some people who come back for the third and the fourth session, and their uptake and their affinity to strengths has become extremely strong, I
Mm.
invite them to lay out and do two things. To say, look at your dominant strengths and tell me what props up. So you actually get into discussions one-on-one with each of these people, to say, this is, I really liked how one participant described it. He said, doing, influencing, relationship building, and thinking are four categories. I have 8 or 9 ways of doing each one of them. And I may not know all the ways of doing them. So it's extremely important for me to know which ones will I use, what I cannot use, and actually get into a discussion of saying, for example, I actually brought a live example to share with you. I know that one of my clients has harmony as 32. It's the only relationship building theme that is 32. And the person loves conflict. The person will go and create a disruption for the sake of creating a disruption. And the person says, you know what, I know it so well. Therefore, I'm going to lead with, if I want to build a relationship, I'll consciously stay away from consensus, conflict, seeking consensus, etc. And I'm going to stay focused on how can I get to know the other person and how can I remain adaptable through the entire situation, because they feature in my dominant strength. So the discussions are actually moving up to say, here is a repertoire of 8 or 9 ways of executing a particular theme category, and which
Mm.
ones can I use, and becoming
Mm.
conscious about what I need to put a pin on.
Mm. Mm. I think that's a great insight, because a lot of times when we start talking about domains, we lose sight of the individual talent themes that make up that domain. So you said, 3 or 8 or 9 ways of getting to accomplish an objective in a particular domain, and each of them are quite distinct. So it's about, what is my style? So having your own management style, individual style, personality, quirks, whatever it is that you want to call it, but whatever it is that comes naturally to me, and picking those out. So I think
Mhm.
that's a great insight. So again, from the perspective of somebody who's just started, you're saying that it's your go-to tool now, using the Strengths Finder. Anything that you've sort of learned by doing, anything that you struggled with initially that sort of is now probably behind you, or something that you're still trying to work around?
I would struggle with, every client. I really like clients who can actually ask me a question that stumps me.
Mm.
Uh, my initial questions were around, so how often should I take my Strengths Finder test? But
Mm.
why do you call it Strengths Finder and you're telling me all these definitions?
Mm.
What is reliability and validity? So really the theoretical aspect of the tool. And I think as I was preparing for my certification, I'm very glad I coached, and I like the format of the certification, because you do not only attend the classroom, you also coach people.
Yeah.
And coaching makes sure you're absolutely grounded in reality on what people are expecting. Uh,
Mm.
so that is, I think that's really what I struggled with. I know that my journey, I don't think I'm struggling with much right now. However, I'm
Mm-hmm.
anticipating a few struggles, which I I have around 75, internal assignments lined up. Two of them are from members of our C-suite. One, I'm working externally with two international clients and anybody else that reaches out. Uh, I also know that the initial conversations may have been very, very well scripted in terms of let's get the pre-work, let's talk about the definitions, what's your initial objective, let's orient you to reports. I think it is about keeping the conversation going and diving deeper and deeper to use strengths with individuals that are now coming up is me venturing into newer territories,
Yeah.
newer pastures. And I think I wouldn't call it as a challenge. I think that's actually expanding my horizons, working with people who get to what most people get to in 4 or 5 sessions in the first session and say, I'm really excited. Where do we go from here?
Hmm. Hmm. So from a where do we go from here perspective, I know, you've been talking about objectives for teams and as well as for those entrepreneurs that you mentioned. So any aha moments around actually meeting an objective for anyone basis certain things you would have discussed as part of your coaching intervention and people sort of followed through?
I Yes, I did, and it's a very personal example. I did take permission from this individual. The person wanted to use strengths in his family and wanted to make sure that there were certain conflicts within the family that he wanted to fix.
Okay.
And was not in a position to get everybody to take the test per se. You're trying to fix a conflict. However, the individual said, "What is it that what is it that I am trying to fix? What strengths of mine will come to bear?"
Hmm.
And I'm, you know, I want to be very discreet. Client confidentiality trumps everything else while I have his permission. I think 25 years in, he was able to use some of his strengths to break the ice
Hmm.
and get a few relationships going
Hmm.
after 25 years.
Hmm.
And that was an extremely big success story.
Hmm.
There was another individual at work that this lady that I worked with. I've been working with her for almost 18 months, and I think since we introduced strengths, her own understanding of what drives her and the reaction that it is having on her team members with reference to her competition is top five,
Okay.
and her world go-to view is I want to win. And one
Hmm.
of the things that she realized was to say, if I motivate everybody to say, she, for example, turned around and said, "What is competition for you?" And I said, "It's number 30, actually, number 30." And I said, "If you come to me and say, let's play, and you tell me, and I want to be number one," I said, "It doesn't tickle my fancy any which way."
Hmm.
And that just dropped the penny. She ran, she took the reports of her team members, and she said, "You know what? Nobody has competition, even in the top 20. And here I keep blowing the trumpet of saying we want to be number one. Can I appeal to saying, here is somebody who has harmony as number one? How can I keep my competition in check with this individual?"
Hmm.
So on and so forth. And she very recently reported back it's improved in working relationships. It's been observed by some of her key clients, and as well as I think she is far more at peace with how the team is progressing and getting along together.
Great, great examples, all of them. So Venkat, I think one question that's sort of playing on my mind a little bit is that, of course, being a champion for the idea of strengths-based, something that you've seen for yourself, and therefore you endorse the idea of strengths-based development individually. It's a great thing, but when it comes to being in an organization, especially organizations such as yours, which is huge, what is there something specific? I know there are a few of you who attended the who became certified in terms of systems and processes, anything that you guys have sort of done or intending to do or have ideas that we can share with some of the listeners about how can this idea be incorporated in the existing systems that an organization has?
Okay, so I'm, Pooja, I'll be very candid. I think I'm not at liberty to share some of the plans that are under discussion.
No, absolutely.
However, what I'll tell you is what we have done as a team of three that's working together currently
Hmm.
is in our limited scope of influence. I think we've separated the strengths culture into saying what outcomes can we drive and what
Hmm.
impact can we see. And I think the way we articulate our outcomes is to say, if we have a strength-based culture,
Mm-hmm.
employees will learn their roles very, very quickly.
Hmm.
If we have a strengths-based culture, people will produce more and significantly better work. You just see the happiness quotient absolutely go up. And the impact is people stay with you longer, people are more engaged. 3 months
Hmm.
into the journey, we've scratched the surface. And I think right now it is on a, I would say we are offering it on a tap basis. I'm
Hmm.
personally offering it on a tap basis.
Hmm.
uh, I'm reaching out to leaders. uh, First and foremost, I think something that I took away from the training is, as soon as I finished, I put it on my signature, my top 5, and said, if you want to know more about your Gallup strengths
Hmm.
and you want to be coached, reach
Hmm.
out to me. That's actually generated a lot of buzz. I updated all my social media internally and externally,
Hmm.
which is, people are at least reaching out to understand what it is.
Hmm.
We, in addition to that, talk about it in, I talk about my personal experiences and uh, I talk about my personal experiences and some of the success stories with permission from teams and people as I'm
Hmm.
trying to get people into the fold to sign up for it.
Hmm.
And what I do is I work with only one, I work with only one team at a given point in time, because I don't, I work with a team over a 6 to 8 week time frame in order for them, to completely make the journey before I
Yeah.
move on to the next team.
Yeah.
So I did take on 2, 3 teams in parallel, but
Hmm.
the day job plus the fact that it's important that you give people adequate time to be able to understand, imbibe, make their journey is extremely critical.
Hmm.
I'm not sure,
Yeah.
Pooja, if I answered your question, but
No,
those
no,
are some of my
absolutely.
initial
No, no,
thoughts.
absolutely. Absolutely. And you have given some examples of how you're already doing it. So I think that is that's what I was essentially looking at. Any questions from your end, Jim?
Yeah, so Ryan had asked the question, did we hear right 72 internal assignments? Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so his question is, wow, that's a lot. It's really a statement more than it's a question. But he asked, how do you meet with them all individually? What's your plan? How do you kind of work with that many individuals all at the same time? How does it actually work?
So Ryan, thank you for the question, and thank you for the statement as well. I'm actually working with 4 teams with approximately, on an average, 20 people on each team, and that's how I have 75 assignments lined up. The way I do it is, once the team signs up, we get them to take the test. We give them a 2 week window, and once their reports come in, uh, I set up. What I do is I schedule. I have time set out every Tuesday in the evenings to coach people. And I'm happy to do it. I work with some of my external clients over the weekends, but internally, Tuesday evenings are my time. So I go for close to 4 hours if I have to, meeting individuals. So my assignments aren't uh, my assignments run, which is why I said my assignments run over a 6 to 8 week period. I make sure I do not do more than 4 hours of coaching in a week in order for me to be able to give them adequate amount of time and attention. I also set expectations up front when I start to say that I will work with you over a period of time. It may not be in the next 1 or 2 weeks that we will immediately get to you, but it is going to be. And I set a reasonable time frame because I already know my calendar on the number of engagements I've taken on. I was also internally recently asked, saying, you meet so many people, how do you keep it? How do you keep track of everything? I actually don't. I don't have a compelling need to remember. I I request people if I can make notes. I share it with them, and I keep it running as we are going through the session, and I email it to them. So we we pick up the notes as we go back. So there is no need for me to necessarily remember every single detail of what every
Yeah.
single person says.
Mm.
And for me, being in the top 5 actually is of immense value, because I'm in it for the learning and the process of learning, and not for the content. So my job is to actually facilitate awareness and action planning using strengths for the individual in front of me. The content is for theirs to content, and action planning subsequently is theirs to analyze and execute.
Do you see any kind of patterns emerging with that many people? Certainly, you start to see a wide variety of individuals. Do you see any patterns emerging in the folks that you're coaching? Is there anything specific to the environment or those kinds of things as you've done some of these? Obviously, you've done some. Do you see any patterns?
So the patterns are from an environment standpoint. I'll take that, Jim. Thank you. That was a great question. There are two. I want to respond to that in two parts. Part one is, I think, just conceptually, when you talk to people about what are the types of reports, what the definitions are, what is a strength, what is a weakness. 34 is not 34. Number 34 is a lesser talent. It's not necessarily where your weakness resides. Just the sheer joy in a person's eye to say, I did not know how to interpret that. And all along I was worried that strategic was number 34, and it's a requirement on the job for me to be strategic. There is that love, hate, envy that goes on with individuals. I think from a pattern standpoint, what emerges is, I think, just the clarity lifts the weight off people's shoulders in understanding what does the sequence of 34 mean, and what do some of these definitions mean. In terms of the environment, I think what it is fostering is people are beginning to speak. I'm seeing in the 3 teams that I'm actively working on, people are actually beginning to use the same language. And it amazes me on how sharply they can differentiate between a theme and a talent and a strength and a weakness, and not mince words about it. Just the sharpness of it is extremely encouraging. And of course, there are very, very team specific things. The example that I shared with you around, the leader leading with competition, and everybody else. So those are team specific debriefs that we do, that I do as I complete coaching individuals, to say, here is a pattern that I'm picking up. Is that something you want to talk about when we meet for your second session?
Yeah, and we, here, when I bring my summer interns, we bring tech interns in. I have 25 of them that start every summer. We see something very similar where they begin, after 2 weeks, they begin to talk in the same language, which is one of those kinds of things where at first they're not, and then you just slowly see it start to happen, and then all of a sudden they kind of start, I don't want to say they coach each other, but they begin to talk to each other in that same framework, right? They have a common language now to represent themselves in that, and that's really exciting. I get to see that every summer happen. About 2 weeks, it happens every time. Do you see a similar? So is that? Are you seeing that same type of thing happen where they start speaking in a common language then?
Yes, they do. They absolutely do, Jim. One of the other things that I notice is, as people come into the table, they are now, I think, across the teams, they're beginning to realize that if I want to execute strategic thinking, there are 9 ways to do it. And I'm good at 4, you're good at another 2, somebody else is good at another 2. And now the conversations are moving to saying, what does the situation really need of us? And then they say, hey, so here is the person that I need to tap into. So, and the language, I didn't realize, for me, the personal aha moment, Jim, was people pick up this language extremely quickly. And I think almost everyone that takes the test is in it because they want to be in it, and it's therefore they see it as a self-investment. And what I'm leaving with people now is to say, your job is to see how do you operate from ideally your top 5, if not extend it to your dominant themes. The task, in fact, one of the participants came in and said, one of my coaches came in and said, you know what I just realized? It's not about the activity. Regardless of what the activity is, it is about me using one of my top 5 you know themes. And those kind of aha moments, while you still discuss them, is now becoming very commonplace with at least these 3 themes.
That's good. That's good to hear. Same thing. I can pull any of those exercises out of the book that we get. The kit that you get. I can pull any of those exercises out and put them in at any time. And oftentimes it doesn't matter what order I put them in or whatever. Getting them talking about that is the most important thing that we see in that. Just the fact that they're having a discussion. A lot of times the materials are helpful, but getting them to have that discussion is super important. I imagine you see that as well. Do you do any group coaching then in that as well? Is it all individual, or do you get opportunities to bring the groups together and watch them act as a group?
So I am. So my first opportunity, Jim, is on Thursday of this week. I have finished coaching 25 individuals on one single team, and we're bringing them together for the first group coaching opportunity.
That's exciting. That's good.
Very exciting.
That's the money shot right there. That is when you bring them together after you've coached them, and then you bring them together and they have this common language. It just accelerates. I think it's more of an exponential curve than it is a linear curve in their growth together, so that'll be fun. Ryan had a follow-up question to you as well. He said, do you use, when you're taking your running notes, by the way, he said that was a very helpful tip for him. When you're using your running notes, just write those on paper, or do you type them into the computer? Any tools that you're using to do that with?
So I use one of the 3 tools depending on what the individual, actually one of the 4 tools. I either just key it on a live Word document and screen share with the individual as I'm doing it so that they can see what's coming up, or email it to them if it's a face-to-face session. If it's a face-to-face session, Ryan, I make notes on paper and pen and then transcribe it. It's a lot less distracting. We just have paper spread out. I also do it on Evernote if the individual has, also has access to Evernote or OneNote, both of those as well. Most people seem to have access regardless of their, information security systems to Evernote, and therefore it's very easy to type out something on Evernote and share the document. I think with a lot of my clients, we host them on the Google Share Drive, which gives them an opportunity to go back, look at it, and drop me a one-line saying, hey, I've posted my new set of questions as they came up. Here are some of the insights. So it's actually a working document that we share live.
Now that's
yeah.
Go ahead. I was going to say some tools for the 21st century coaches are all available, and you can do that all around the world. I mean, we're just doing this. I'm in Omaha. You guys are at 2 different places in India. We're having this conversation. Of course, you can do all that as well. Pooja, let me turn that back over to you.
Yeah, so I was just saying that the more I hear from coaches, the more you get to hear of such great ideas that coaches are deploying these days. So, for example, all these examples that you mentioned of taking notes are great. I also came across somebody who uses mind maps extensively to make notes. So it's more sort of doing the diagram thing, and you're not really writing too much down. But by the end of the discussion, they have a whole mind map laid out, which sort of helps them relate back to how the conversation had panned out in the first place. So again, something whatever works for anyone. So I think
Pooja,
yes.
I just want to add one more for Ryan. Ryan, what's all of this? Ryan, what all of this is morphing for me is also into templates and skeletons. Skeletal structures of what an introductory session is possibly going to look like. What am I going to cover? So if I'm meeting somebody for the first time, I now have my own template, which I just lift and drop and populate. I even feel free to send it to the individual. What I also do is if somebody sent me their individual objectives, I key out the questions in advance for them to come with some initial thoughts around those questions as well. So that's time well invested as well. But I'm beginning to realize as I'm coaching more and more, I'm beginning to build my own templates on, if it's like an algorithm. If this happens, that's a possible go-to template that I can tap into.
Yeah. Excellent. And that's how, the creativity sort of sparks. I think in the kit that we gave you, there were so many templates that were there as well. So you can start off with those. And then, I always tell coaches that you pick what works best for you, feel free to improvise, feel free to sort of change it. And like you said, have, scenario 1, scenario 2, scenario 3 sort of a thing. So it's just whatever works best for you. So that's great. That's all the questions that we have for today, Venkat. Thank you so much for coming. And for all the listeners out there, like I said, that we got to know Venkat when he was doing the Gallup-Certified Accelerated Program and became a certified coach. And we have another program coming up in Delhi in the month of July, coming up in Bombay actually, the week of 27th of July. So if you have any questions around there, feel free to ping or reach out to anyone within Gallup. And Jim, that's all that I have from here.
Good, Venkat. Thank you for coming on. Ryan thanks you personally for a little one-on-one coaching session that he got tonight. I'll remind you that if you do want to join us live, oftentimes we have a very intimate way of conversing with you during these programs through our chat room, and so it's a great way. Ryan got some questions answered. If you want to join us live, head over to the Eventbrite page. That's just gallup.eventbrite.com for all the events that we have going on. We do them on both sides of the planet, so you can attend any one of them, either in the time zone we do Singapore, India, or Australia, or in the U.S. time zones. We also do a couple of them here. We'd love to have you join us. And Venkat, again, thank you for being here. I'll remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strengths Center. You can send us your questions or comments with an email at coaching@gallup.com. You can also catch the recorded audio and video of this program as well as all the past ones. We have a ton of them available for you. And excited to announce to you guys will be the first to ever hear this, we have a brand new cataloging system coming for all these Call to Coaches. So it's still in the works right now, but we're getting pretty excited about being able to launch that here maybe by the end of the year, so you could type in a question and maybe go right to a spot in a video where that would be available for you. So a lot of work to do that, but that's coming as well. We now have some 25 global meetups going on around the world. If your city is not listed on them, just head out to coaching.gallup.com, click on the meetup tabs. If it's not there, maybe you should start one. We'd love to have you do that. We have a goal of 100 by the end of the year, so we have a little ways to go. If you have any questions on those, you can contact me directly. Lots of great ways to get that done, or just fill out that contact form on the page there, and they will get that to me. Don't forget, we also have Android and iPhone apps available for you. If you want to keep your top 5 always available, a lot of people have trouble remembering it. The best way to do it is put it on your phone. You can log in and look at it anytime. Make it your lock screen, so you have to look at it every time. The average person looks at their phone 63 times a day. You won't forget your top 5 after that as well. We want to thank everyone for joining us today. If you enjoyed it, we will encourage you to share it, and we'll look forward to the next Call to Coach. And with that, we'll say goodbye, everyone.